two, one, go.
Hello, Quackin' Smite League. Today, we are doing a long since lost relic of the past, the good old QSL podcast. Today, I'm joined here by Cooter, and I'm joined here by Red Sniper, um, fellow members of the league here too. Of course, there's two moderators and one wanted criminal, but
Absolutely. Larceny.
absolutely.
Larceny.
Ugh.
Man's on the strike list. But anyways, um,
On the strike
it's a
list, he
good
should be
time.
banned.
Banned hammer. But yeah,
Ban hammer. Straight up.
we
Him and
have
Skeet.
we've been absent for a bit. We apologize. Things got very hectic and busy near the end of the season. For a lot of us, you might notice that our good old host Joe is not here. So that's what we're working with. We apologize, but we will give you what you want. So to begin, the basic itinerary that we have today is we will talk about the playoffs of QSL Season 2, their results, what we thought about the overall view of the abbreviated playoff, and then we will discuss and announce the accolades and all stars for Season 2, both majors and minors. And then we will discuss the big things. Season 3, the new stuff, rule set changes, how the organizations are, what an organization is, rule sets that govern player trades, waiver wires, all of that fun stuff. And then in the end, we will discuss finally some of the organization names and some of the captains and what they may mean for the future in season 3. So, to begin, let's start off with the first big game. It wasn't the first game streamed, but it certainly was a big surprise. All in, falling in a best of one to Booney Gang. Kick us off, fellas.
Yeah. Oh boy. So I mean, things were kind of weird to begin with. We were kind of operating on this semi-compressed schedule, trying to make sure that playoffs were going to be done in a timely fashion, and it didn't really work out how we initially had planned it, but eventually it happened and it worked out well. Um, and it gave us sort of that excitement of everything's on the line. All the chips are in the middle, and I know I'm playing it off of their name, but it was All In and Booty Gang, and All In was the number one seed. They had lost what, one, maybe two sets all year long, or all
I believe
season
one
long, I
set
should say.
to Dharma Killers.
Yeah, they lost to Dharmic. They beat Phenoms. They beat everybody else they came across, and they're playing Boonie Gang. And no offense to Boonie Gang, but like, okay, they had had some good, solid play here and there, but nobody really expected them to do particularly well. Um, Things were kind of chaotic. Things didn't quite seem to fit from time to time or from place to place. And then out of nowhere, for some strange reason, like they decided, you know what? Let's just play Smite. We're not going to mess with anything else. We're just going to play Smite. And they beat All In. Best of one, all the chips on the table, and it's like bring it. And I don't think anybody expected this one. I
Not at
mean,
all. Not at all, man. I mean, All In looked like they were near unbeatable. I mean, maybe you have Dharmic take a game, maybe you have Phenoms take a game, but they looked unbeatable. But in that best of one, Booney Gang showed up, and Booney Gang showed the team that they could have been all season. And they really, really showed out in this game. It was incredible.
yeah. I mean,
Oh yeah.
you were expecting like, okay, Edamar's gonna pop off and he's gonna take everything,
Uh-huh.
or Bonsai is gonna be solid and there's not gonna be an issue there, or there was always going to be something where Allen just couldn't lose. That's just what it was. It was always going to be either someone's going to pop off, or there's going to be a play, or there's going to be a team fight, and you knew that All In was just going to pull out at the end because that's what they did all season. And you get, 15 minutes in, and you're going, what am I watching here? The the mid lane is getting pushed. The solo lane, Sub Killer, who had been so solid, so strong all year long, and just nothing. It's like, wait a second, what happened here? And that little tiny lead that just started to go for Boonie Gang just started to snowball into this 5-man death ball, and Olin couldn't stop it.
Yeah, I think a lot of this game happens because first, that solo lane is quite the matchup. Enemy God versus Sub Killer. And what I had heard prior to the game is that Sub wasn't quite feeling kind of well. He was getting into his own head about his gameplay. And then he goes ahead and instead of picking up, I believe at that point in the draft, he could have grabbed the Kukulin for himself. And instead, he picks up Xingqian, if I recall.
You're
Yeah.
correct.
And that did not seem to be the best of the best calls there. A playoff call, one might say.
Hmm.
Really just an unfortunate circumstance for him because um, he wasn't able to do what Inimi did, which is drop 20k damage onto the enemy team.
Yeah.
Um, they did not even need their own captain, who was stuck onto carry role for the first time the entire season and did approximately 3,000 some damage over the course of a game on Apollo. But he had hella, uh, pardon my French, structure damage that game and just
No doubt.
pushed his lane out. And that's all he needed to do to end up beating Bonsai. Bonsai was over there in the team fights, but it didn't matter because Kokolin was just surviving. And of course, you had the rest of the team there doing the damage and making the plays that they needed to make. Um, I think those two differences there, the solo lane matchup and ultimately the carry matchup, at least the play style that Bunagang went for there, is what made the difference. If this is a 3-game set, All In still might take it. They adjust. Sub Killer slaps himself, says, I'm gonna play a traditional role, traditional solo lane, but you know, it's all or nothing. And unfortunately, the team of which has that namesake did not make do with that.
Yeah, and I mean, let's call it like it is. I mean, that was a huge call by Boonigang. I don't know if it came directly from Boomy House himself, but switching no bad manners intended, a better mechanical player into the jungle to kind of help facilitate for Animi and kind of keep the pressure off of him, keep the farm off of that side of the map so that Animi can just do Animi God things is a huge win for Booney Gang, and we saw it throughout the playoffs. I mean, obviously we talk about how they won that set 1-0, and we'll get to the other ones later, but that's a huge call. Did they play that in the regular season, or was that the first
Never.
game that they switched those two?
That was literally the first game.
Oh, what a huge call!
Mhm.
Huge call. And
And
for my money, go ahead.
I I I'll let you continue, but I think it's literally because they said, "Well, we're going against All In." Chino said, "I'm going to try the jungle," and that's the call they made.
Exactly. And I mean, for my money, if I have to take a solo lane from this season, I'm taking Sub Killer. I'm taking a Nimi God. You flip a coin, and that's who's gonna win the lane that day, right? And it came down to the fact that Booney had nothing to lose, and All In was kind of playing scared for a better for lack of a better term. I don't think it was necessarily scared, but they played as if they didn't need to do anything special to win. They were just going to win based on their pure talent alone, which they did all season, and it was a big mistake for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So moving on to the second biggest upset, which is kind of crazy. Dharma Killers, the second best team all season long, the only people to take one set off of All In,
Mm.
losing to the men themselves, the Kepui Suns. Now, that match was absolutely nuts. You saw for the first time, frankly, this season, and anytime I've seen him play, Davies struggle in his position as, I think, at an SCC level, right? Player,
Mhm.
jungle,
Mhm.
um, get targeted and successfully out of the game completely. He was on his comfort pick of Ratatusker, and you saw him getting ulted on cooldown by Meaty Man Link on the Kukulkan. One absolutely huge game that was. I mean, take us through some of the more specifics, guys.
Red, do you want to go first?
I mean, I I think I want to. I kind of want to put credit where it's due and give full credit to Kepui on that one
Mhm.
because when it comes to what Davies was able to do and what he wasn't able to do, like we had seen him time and time again play, play Booney, play Kepui, play Goon Squad, play Gem, play anybody, and he'd throw the team on his back and he'd just say, "Okay, guys, we're gonna win this one." And sometime I don't know what it was, but Kepwe decided to say, you know what? I don't care if we lose all of our lanes. I don't care if people get pressured. Every time we see Davies, every time we see him use an ability and dash or alt or just as long as he's by himself, kill him every single time wherever you can find him. They sent I know Kepi was sending their support in, their jungler in. Every single time they found him, they'd call it out, they'd ping it, and they'd instantly collapse. And it was just like Davies wasn't allowed to play the game as much as he wanted to. He just wasn't allowed the space or the time. It's like normally you'd see the little like dance every so often, and then Davies would go grab some farm somewhere, or there would be a ward somewhere that would ping out and, oh, the jungler's over there, so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to grab some farm. And he'd get a level or two ahead. And then he'd swing that into, now I'm a couple levels ahead. I'm going to use my mechanics and I'm just going to bury you. He never got ahead in this one. Like, I don't know if it was just the straight up counter warding that happened or if it was something else that Kepwe specifically did, but I think I got to give credit to Kepwe when it's due, and they just shut Davies down at every turn. And the rest of Dharmic didn't step up to fill that void, and that's, I think, the reason why they lost.
I I'm with you. I mean, I think a big strength that I don't think people realized on um, the Dharma Killers team is the solo lane. Destiny is a phenomenal player in my opinion. I think whenever Destiny can win lane, Destiny becomes jungle too, and that's what causes Dharmic to run the game. Yes, Davies controls everything until that point. People try to kill him; they can't do it because that man is just more mechanically skilled than most people in the league at this point. But it's when Destiny can actually rotate into these fights and become that jungle too and put so much pressure on that backline that causes them to win. Liam Naughty Bear did a fantastic job holding him in lane, beating him in lane, and just allowing the rest of his team to win that 4v4, which, in my opinion, minus Davies, Capui Sun says the better 4v4.
Yep, I agree. Completely agree with that.
One of the things that um, I think highlighted this game though is that we saw for the first time really in that game, Diamond Killers opting for a very strange support pick. It was Ares, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um, we had not seen I'm Already Mad play that kind of support all season long.
Mm-mm.
She traditionally played, simple peel
Mm-hmm.
gods, and I think that made a very big difference because Ares is an offensive making the plays god, and she wasn't able to efficiently make the plays. Like hitting a huge Ares ult or hitting it enough times to be a beads burner. Having that CDR, it simply wasn't enough, and I don't think she looked comfortable on that pick that whole game. Um, when they could have had really any safe support pick. Um, so it just seemed unusual there too, on that side of the map.
Very, very. Another thing with Dharmic that I don't think they ever actually caught up to where they were before when they made the change with putting Cruz um, in the ADC role and switching Raptor back into mid. I don't think they ever got the synergy together between Cruz and Davies the way that they had it, or I'm sorry, Cruz and Raptor the way Davies and Raptor the way that they had it previously,
Yeah, good
and
time old
same in
man.
the duo lane. Yeah, I don't think they ever caught back up to where they were when Dharmic looked like that team that was. I've said it on the podcast multiple times. They looked as unbeatable as All In. They looked as unbeatable as Phenoms. I don't think they ever caught up, and maybe maybe hindsight's 2020, and that wasn't the best call. I'm not questioning it. I'm just pointing out a fact. I don't think it looked as good as they did in the early season.
Yeah, Raptor has been switching around his roles.
No
He
doubt.
played actually very well in season 1 at the mid lane. He's opted to switch to ADC season 2
Mhm.
and played all right. And then I think switching back to mid after not having played it all that time, which at that point would have
Mhm.
been close to like 4 months,
Mhm.
that was just, he didn't look as comfortable as he did season 1. Um, yeah, I agree with you there for sure.
And
Um,
then you have the patented rivalry there with Meaty Man Link going into Raptor, and Raptor is not very happy about losing to Meaty Man Link 2 years in a row. But fortunately, I don't think we get to see it in year three.
yeah. Um, yeah, since Link is not playing, that will not happen in season 3. But
Unfortunate.
that covers that. Kepri win in a fantastic fashion, um, and be the second team that we talked about, but I think they were timeline wise the first team to upset another.
Hmm.
So huge matchup there. And then coming in to the set in which you played in, Cooter,
Hmm.
Glory at Mortem take Cthulhu Moons 1-0, a chalk matchup there. Player on the ground, take us through what was in your heads this game.
It was a tough game, man. Really tough. I mean, Gloria Mortem played just as they should have. I mean, they won both side lanes very handily. They kind of tied up the mid lane because they know that the Moon's best player, and the player that can definitely in the right situation carry a game for somebody. Austin, um, they kind of tied him up, didn't allow him to do anything that he wanted to do, and they just ran the game. And honestly, I mean, Sphinx is a great player. We didn't have any. We had 2 games in with him. Unfortunately, we did have to use an emergency sub in that situation. But even with our normal lineup, I don't know that it matters. I think Glory at Mortem is a very very good team, and um, they definitely deserve to win that game, without a doubt.
So one of the things like we didn't really do this for the other squads because there's no one here to really talk about it. But
Uh-huh.
you know, your squad was an interesting one. Formerly, it's the Resistance, new captain, new face, a lot of players gone, so a lot of new faces coming in. How do you feel about from the timeline you became the captain of that team till the end of that team? Um, sort of how that went for the players, for yourself, sort of knowing that games are going to be very tough, um, and knowing that with this wholly new constructed squad that there are going to be some rough challenges middle of the season.
It was tough. It was tough. There were a lot of a lot of changes that happened. Whenever we actually moved to the Cthulhu Moons, a lot of the roster changed, and that was halfway through the season. So we were already starting behind the eight ball in terms of time played as a group. And then unfortunately, Pokemon, our ADC, couldn't play the rest of the season, so we had to move on to a another mini league ADC. Um, so we moved, Arc into the fold, and upon taking it over, I mean, one of the better players in the mini league was DK on the run, and he is without a doubt a support main. Um, Fortunately, I'm a support main too, so I had to go slightly off roll into the jungle, and it hurt. It hurt. It was a tough season, but I think overall, I don't know that there was anybody on that roster that was really upset. I think everybody knew going in that it was going to be tough sledding. I mean, there's a lot of talent at the major league level, um, and we just didn't have enough time to get together and improve the way we needed to compete with those middle of the road teams that we were going to end up playing in the playoffs to even have a chance to make a run at All In or Phenoms or Dharmic or any of those teams. But it was a very interesting season, and I'm proud of those guys, no doubt about it. They showed some heart. We came to the playoffs. We did our best. That's all we can ask.
Well said. Well said. Um, unless you have anything to add to this, Red. Um,
I mean, not really. It was kind of funny because the other bracket was like bracket upset, and this side was bracket chalk. And when Gloria at Mortem faced Cthulhu Moons, it's like, okay, we kind of have an idea of what's going to happen. Um, I mean, unless something terrible happens and Gem has to put in, their sub, and Cthulhu Moons has to have a sub, and I mean, you guys did eventually have to use a sub for that playoff match, but
Mhm.
it was still one of those things where you kind of scratch your head and you go, I mean, we think we know what's going to happen, but after what just happened in playoffs, is there a chance? Maybe.
So
And
you're saying there's a chance?
yeah, exactly. You're saying there's a chance. Um, but yeah, and I mean, as awesome as it would have been to just see upset after upset after upset, I mean, eventually the trend had to fall, and sadly, it was you guys that had to fall.
yep. Yep. So there, that match was played, and so their opponents, Glory at Mortem, uh, awaited is the result of Phenoms versus Goon Squad. Phenoms taking that very handedly in a 1-0. I mean, we talked about it there. Cthulhu Moons being a constructed squad of a lot of people who were pretty high on the ladder in the mini league,
Mhm.
but still not quite at the level that you see, or rather saw at the majors level in season two. And here we have Goon Squad in a very interesting situation. Since the last podcast happened, um, a lot of things happened to that squad. Um, we had a incident of a mod breaching his role and character as a moderator, forcing himself onto the roster of Goon Squad, only to be caught and then removed from the league and server. And so you had a bunch of people leave, and Goon Squad was essentially entirely constructed of people from the mini league. I mean, even then, you had the captain of the team itself unable to play. So, um, a cobbled together squad facing off against what presumably was, with how the bracket's set up, going to be a finals team. It was a pretty stacked matchup. Not much else I can personally add.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I think
mean,
you hit the nail on the head. Go
yeah.
ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, Goon Squad, kudos to those guys for trying to make the best out of a bad situation. Um, I mean, they genuinely tried. They genuinely tried to put something together to at least have a fighting chance. Um, and I mean, my mini league team played them sort of in the quote unquote grudge match that we had, and it was just fun. You know, it was good fun to play against them. Um, they were such good sports. They had such good camaraderie after that. We were poking and making fun, and they were doing the same, and it was really good to just see that happening. But I mean, at the end of the day, a playoff match is a playoff match, and the I don't want to call it the expected steamroll, but that's kind of exactly what it was. That slow swirling death ball picked up speed, and you just kind of look at it and go, "Yep, kind of saw that one coming."
No doubt, no doubt. I mean, at the end of the day, it is what it is. Life happens, things happen. Team slated, as we said before, slated since the beginning of the season to be finals contenders against the team that was in shambles. It is what it is. We got the result we were expecting for that.
Hmm.
Yep. Not much else to be said. So we move on then. That was the first round. Every single match was a best of one. And so we move back into the traditional competitive Smite format of best of three for two matches in the semifinals. And the first of them was a, a game that we didn't quite know what it would entail. Two upset teams coming up against each other, two teams that have struggled all season to compete at the majors level. Um, Kepwi Suns, they played a different style than a lot of the majors teams. A lot of the majors teams tried to play around, how do we construct this extremely talented roster? How do we make the best trades, the best pickups? Kepri Suns did not change really all that much or any at all, I don't think, throughout the season. They played a mentality of we are pals, and you know, whatever happens, happens. We're here to have fun. And they played, and they were off of a big high as well coming into this fight against Booney Gang, who were almost expected to get upset by a mini league team in the former playoff format, coming in with that change as well on their roster. So a very interesting matchup that Booney Gang takes in a 2-0 sweep. Um, when it comes to the stories of these games, Inimi obviously comes to mind. You'll be hearing that name a lot, I think, throughout this podcast. But he continued to shine. He had games where he had even more player damage than uh, he had against All In. And Kepri Suns sort of played the same game that they had for a lot of the season, which is again a we're friends, whatever happens, happens. It I don't think throughout that set that they really tried to push the issue. They just played within their own kind of headspace, which again is fine. You play how you want to, but Boonegang just off of that roster change and off of that win, we're just able to carry home a sweep.
One highlight from game one in that set was throughout the mid game into the late game, Animigod had more damage than the rest of his team combined. I want to say it
Yeah.
again, combined.
Yeah. Yep.
And we saw again. I mean, we saw Boomy House. We saw him split pushing his brains out, just doing great things, pushing down towers, forcing somebody to get on the other side of the map, while the rest of his team takes the 4-on-4 without him. But give credit where it's due. Again, at the end of the day, Kepui Suns was doing a great job of defending the Phoenixes, making sure that they didn't get all three Phoenixes down at any point in time, making sure that they were working on getting a second and a third Phoenix up every defense. And they were actually looking to turn the corner, but then they took a fight. I think it was at the middle Phoenix, maybe in the Titan room. Um, Boomy House went from 3,000 damage to around 8,000 damage, I think it was. So in one fight that ended up winning them the game, he doubled his player damage, almost tripled his player damage. So give credit where it's due. He did what he had to do when it was time to do it, and that ended up winning them the game. So props to Boomy, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and also one of the things that like Link played so well against Dharma Killers, and we were thinking that maybe he would be a huge X factor coming in, but it was a bit of a regression to the mean type of thing. Um, like I had said, they basically played the same way they played all season, which again will win you a few games here and there, but not enough here in the playoffs it seems. So great season, of course, to Kepui Suns though. They played like Kuda likes to say, with heart, with spirit, with sportsmanlike conduct. Um, truly a squad to recognize as being constructed a lot from the season one champs. And so with them falling, we knew that new names would be etched into the board of QSL as majors champions. And with that, we move on to the next semifinal matchup: Phenoms versus Gloria and Mortem. Um, again, Phenoms being the presumptive winners into this. They had been talking some pretty big game uh, prior to this set, saying, well, we're just going to 2-0 you. Who cares? But Gloria Mortem puts up a very big fight in this set from game to game. Game one, Phenoms won pretty handily. And then into game two, there were a few questionable calls and fights by that Phenom squad that cost them that game, which for the first like 7 or 8 minutes of game three seemed to be in the headspace of both teams. Like, this is the game. If Glorious Mortem does the same thing they do last game, they upset Phenoms, and we have two entirely different squads than we thought we were going to get for finals. But Phenoms, they shook it off, and they got into the headspace they needed to be, which is, okay, let's play Smite. Let's not think about the circumstances. This is a game. These people are beatable. We've done it all season long. Let's do it here. They were able to take the fights when they needed to, and won what ended up being a very handily won game three and set.
No
Yeah,
doubt.
oh, go
But
ahead, Cooter.
no, after you.
I was gonna say the the thing about that game two. I'm just gonna call it an anomaly because I think that's what it was. Um, I mean, you saw Phenoms from time to time would pick something a little offbeat, or maybe something that just something you may not quite seem as kosher. They were having fun. They enjoyed playing the game. That's what they were. That's what they tried to do. But at the same time, like, they played standard picks, they played their on rolls. It wasn't like a, something weird out of the box, oh, they memed themselves or something like that. It was a lot of, I almost wanted to say, Phenoms got a little big for their britches in game number two. And they kind of said, well, it doesn't matter if we team fight. We can, I could take 1-on-2 fights. I mean, you saw Brownside time and time kind of go into a 2v1 or a 3v1 situation with, almost impunity, because in game one, he was able to do that, where, he would go in, he'd get a stun, and everybody on Gem kind of ran away because they thought instantly that, oh, well, Brownside is initiating here for his team to follow up, and there was no follow up. So in game two, the initial thought was, well, if Brownside's just doing this to be Brownside, then if he's going to run forward, we're just going to kill him. And that's what ended up starting sort of that weird sort of passage of play where Brownside would get picked off. And then you'd see, I don't know if, I think their warding was a lot better. I think Gem's warding was a lot better in game two. And because of that, they were able to see if it was just one person trying to make a play. And when that one person happened, I think the rotations were a lot better from Gem, and that allowed them to pick up that second game. So I think part of it may have been Phenoms getting a little big for their britches, but I also think part of it was Gem was a little bit better coordinated in game two. And I mean, again, credit where credit's due. Gem won game two. They earned that victory. But I think Phenoms overall kind of said, you know what? We styled game one. We got slapped game two because pride comes before a fall, and now game three, we're gonna do it again. We're gonna make sure that we close this thing out right like we're supposed to, and I think that's sort of how that series went.
Yeah, that's what I was definitely going to mention too. That game two was a roller coaster, absolute roller coaster. We're I think it was 12, 13 minutes into the game. Phenoms are up 10 kills in game two, and they're up almost 6,000 gold, I think. Um, and at the end of the game, Gloria won by 5,000 gold. So somewhere between the 12-minute mark and the 30-minute mark, Gloria turned it on, and they didn't look back. They put the pedal to the floor, and I have to give credit to Rylan in that situation. Ry absolutely put the team on his back and said, you know what, we're going to game three, boys.
Hmm.
And unfortunately for Gloria, they couldn't get it done in game three. I think, like you said, Red, they I think game one and game two, Phenoms were they were having fun, but they realized that, hey, this is a best of three. We have to win this game, and they did it. They did it pretty handily too.
Yeah, and credit to that squad. I personally, when the season began, and this was my personal opinion, like no shot at anyone, I thought Glory at Mortem was going to be a pretty bad team. I thought they were going to be a bottom team given how they drafted. I wasn't quite sure of where Omega was going to fit in. I had questions about their sub choice, but in the end, they played very well, and we will mention one of those players here shortly. But I think that team, despite what their situation was, with the trade that they made to Phenoms, while they made Phenoms a very talented squad, that changed Glory at Mortem's course from being what I personally thought was going to be a bottom team into a fairly good top four team in season two majors. So hats off to them. They played phenomenally, and they certainly changed my minds about a lot of the players there. So with that in mind, we bring it into the big game itself, the big match, majors, finals, Phenoms versus Booney Gang. This is a sad story, somewhat, because while we were hyped, I know I was, uh,
Hmm.
5 game series between what we all thought was going to be a team that we would see in the finals after trades at events early in the season against a team that just showed up and played games and won them. But we get 2 games and one forfeited game to finish out QSL season two, with Phenoms being the champions somewhat unceremoniously. I would have to say, we can't just brush it under the rug and say, well, it didn't happen. It was a best of three. This was intended to be a best of five. And uh, really, kind of sad that those certain players on Booney Gang, despite them being an underdog, decided that they weren't even going to play a full 5 game set. Um, very personally upsetting. Um, so kind of an unfortunate situation, but in the first two
Hmm.
games, I mean, you saw Phenoms play exactly as they needed to. There were no games. There were no games being had there. That was Phenoms playing at their best. They did not pull any punches. There were no Chiron supports. It was all chalk. And that's what you would have expected from them. That's what you would have expected from a final. And even though it was in an unceremonious, unsportsmanlike fashion, they still are champions. And even if this goes all 5 games, I still think Phenoms was the better team in the end.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think that was always slated to be Phenom's season this season. They've done great things, and that just goes to show too. We talk about them having a good time, having fun all season. That goes a long way when it comes to team chemistry. Being able to have fun with the people that you're playing with, it's gonna take you somewhere. Naturally, I mean the players themselves are on Phenoms are just gifted players. Um, but they went over the top. They were, as you said, they were slated for the finals right from the very beginning. And that is that you can't look past the fact that they were having a good time all season. But they absolutely buckled down in that best of 5 finals. Um, I think even if they play game 3, I think it only goes 3 games. Unfortunately, I think Vakis is a good enough player to hold Animi accountable for all the things that Animi was doing for the entire playoffs and for a lot of the season. Vakis is a very very good player, and you take a Nimigod off of the Booney Gang squad, and they look very very human. So congrats to Phenoms. You can't sugarcoat it at all. They are the champs and they deserve it.
Yep. Um, I mean, yeah, it's one of those things that you absolutely hate to see where you just, I mean, but semi being in this position myself, um, there's certain times where you are just so mechanically beaten where the mental toll, you just kind of say, you know what, it's not working, it's just not here. Um, sub me out, do something that helps the team to just do something better than what we're doing right now. And the problem that Booney Gang had was they don't have that option. They already used their 2 free agent subs, so they couldn't sub anybody that wasn't on the roster. And it was multiple players, so you can't even grab their sub and say, well, we'll just sub one person out and go that way. It was just kind of, well, here's where we're at. This is kind of what's happening, and the way that Phenoms won game 1 and 2, I agree. I don't see Booney Gang coming out with a game 3 victory or even a game 4 victory. Um, it's it was sad to see that it ended that way, but it was kind of, for all intents and purposes, kind of expected.
Yeah. But sometimes, I mean, Buddha Gang had nothing to lose. They were slated as a team that was struggling, that was going to get beaten by a minis league team in the former playoff format, and then they come in and go into the finals. I mean, personally, I would consider that a very very big honor to make it that far.
Mm-hmm.
But this game was also even a week delayed because of the very tragic death of John Finch, SPL host and caster. Um, Rest in peace to him. But they had all that time, and they leave it at a best of 3 is a very very sad affair. Uh, not something that we want to see repeated. But shout out to Phenoms though. You still can't take it away from them. As Nick said, they are the champions. They have that role. Groundside Skeet, Rube, and Vakis. Um,
Duck.
who am I forgetting? Duck,
Duck.
the washed ADC, and then Mr. Kepri as their
Mr.
sub.
Kep. Yep.
So shout out to them. They won QSL Season 2 majors, and they they deserved it. Um, Something that we might actually want to cover that I didn't put down in the notes, I almost forgot about it, is we did have a minis final
We
in
don't have to
replacement for
cover
the
Yes.
that.
main
We don't have to cover that.
game.
We
Bad
we we
memories.
we, we don't have
Bad
to
memories
cover
are
that.
coming.
It's there. No, there's still some. I will put it this way: there are still some things that I was so upset with that happened in that run up to the finals that I have specifically put in things in season 3 to make sure that that never happens again. Ever.
Well, luckily, I mean, so I guess we should. The NM Army with the pickup of Scarab. I mean, we know it. We've all known it. Um, he ran games down completely against everyone. That's not me speaking as a competitor. I know I'm not that great, but um, it was very tough 11 minutes in having a Mulan on my backs. So that's not something you see
Yeah.
every single game. So uh, just a little bit of a rough situation there. And that just sort of highlights the state of the mini leagues, unregulated, uncoordinated. And yet we were still able to. I mean, it's sort of a fitting end to the mini league, is it not? Just an absolute mess. no, no, no other way to put it. No other way to put it.
But we did learn from it. So moving forward, I think that the miners, the new system is going to be fantastic, and I think that we all learned from the mistakes that happened throughout this whole season, and it's going to be better moving forward, without a doubt.
Yeah, I mean I definitely would have preferred to play the minors the mini league final, not against 4 major league players, but that's just speaking from my perspective. Um but yeah, there were a lot of things where you kind of scratch your head and you're going, well, is this allowed or is that allowed? Is this allowed? Is that allowed? What about this or what about that? And I think that now that we've sort of seen what can go wrong, I think that's given the moderators a lot of experience into, okay, we've seen it go bad. How do we prevent it from going bad again? And how do we make sure that everybody has an enjoyable time in the future? Just to make
Hmm.
sure that what happened previously, we take the good things that happened from this year's mini league and we put it into next season's minors and we go, okay, this is what was good. But then we also say, okay, there were a lot of screw ups. How do we prevent the screw ups from happening again?
Yeah, absolutely is how I would put it. We both played in the minis. We kind of knew the situation going into this red. So
Yeah.
um,
I'm so excited for season 3, guys. Oh my goodness,
well, we'll
it's
get
gonna
to
be
Yeah.
season
Well,
three.
fantastic.
we'll get
I
there.
know,
We're
I
not
know.
quite there yet. We're not quite there
I'm
yet.
antsy. I'm antsy.
It's all right. It's all right. We this next section is gonna go pretty quick. So, we've already announced a couple of the accolades here. Enemy and Omega, of course, being it. Enemy being the majors MVP, making the finals, making that team extremely competitive, and just overall, I mean, that man is a very talented guy. He's gotten even more talented over the season. I truly do think that if he were to go onto an SOC roster, he would be a very, very good pickup
Hmm.
um, for any team that's eligible and has a lot of players that are competitive at that level. I think he would be a fantastic uh, player there. And he showed up to the playoffs more than anyone did, truly, and he deserves it. that's all my thoughts. I don't know what you guys have to say about Inimi. Any personal, whatever.
Yeah, I mean he's a fantastic player. There's zero doubt about it, and he's definitely deserving of the MVP of the playoffs at the very least.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head on that one.
Yeah, and then our majors MIP, Omega Bulldog. Um, I coming into the season and as I said, evaluating where Glory at Mortem was, I had huge doubts as to how well Omega was going to do. In the prospects, he did not look very good in a lot of situations. He didn't look very comfortable in comp play. Um, there was also a big air around him going into the season that he wasn't exactly a fun person to be around. He had already ruffled a lot of people's feathers, so to speak. Um, but he turned it around, and I truly think he's most improved player, both in terms of his play and his attitude. I think he's become a lot more humble about how well he is as a player, and he's gotten a lot better. He went from what I would evaluate, and my evaluation isn't always on par, I will admit, from someone who was probably a gold level PC player, um, all the way to plat. And that's a phenomenal turnaround. I think a lot of that has to do with the practice he had, and in addition to that, the players he had around him. Rai
Hmm.
is a fantastic person, all in all, to help you with your game. Sacrificial Pit, their mid, is also a truly nice who can help people out at the plat and diamond level at PC. So, um, really, just hats off to him. He really changed my perspective personally.
Yeah, and I touched on it before. I'll touch on it again. I mean, hats off to him. From the beginning of the season, his draft strategy was we're going to get a group of players together that is happy to help each other out and get better at Smite and have a good time doing it. And he proved it after one game, making a trade that a lot of people were not super happy about, but made his team significantly better. Um, and I think that the new players that he brought in definitely fit the mold he was looking for. So hats off to him. I think in general he had a strategy, and he definitely he executed on that strategy. So hats off to him.
Anything to add, Red?
Um, I mean, not really. It was interesting watching. I mean, especially with Omega being a solo laner. I mean, we think about the solo laners in the majors, and these are the people that just mechanically, I mean, God pool speaking, these are some of the best players that are out there. I mean, we just said Inimigod. We just said, Vacus and Subkiller. Guys that can run a game. And then you have Omega Bulldog, who makes it one step away, in fact, one game away from making the finals. After, I mean, to be honest, rated fairly low when it came to prospects, um, but then showed that the numbers don't mean everything. And sometimes if you can build a team around getting better, that progress throughout the season will definitely add up at the end of the season.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't disagree. That I personally, if I had a vote, I would have voted for him. Um, he he really changed my outlook. I thought that him being a captain was a questionable call by the moderation team at the time, and then because he was a new player to the league, and then going in his draft seemed so strange to me. but he changed my perspective of him as a person and a player, truly. So hats off to him. He's the majors MIP, and so we move into the minors. Rated by the community, we have Yellowjin coming in as the minors MVP. Um, I can't talk enough about Charles slash Yellowjin, since he was on my team all the whole season. He is such a nice dude to be around. Um, he he is someone who is anti BM, which is just crazy. Like he will say, like if a joke comes off as whatever, you don't like it, I'll take it back. I'm fine with working with anyone. He worked with us fantastically. He made changes throughout the season. He was initially in the solo lane, in his main role, and then he was moved to support for Achilles, and then he finally switched with Lady at the end of the season to go into carry. So he showed that he's very competitive in a lot of different roles. It's very difficult to really kind of analyze like what level of play he's at, but um, he plays well wherever he is. He's a nice dude to be around, and he sort of really tied together a team that, uh, from personal experience, a lot of other teams got to have coaching. It seems that our namesake for all of the season uh, did not care to help us all that much. We did not do a whole lot of VOD review, so there wasn't a whole lot of improvement as much as the other mini teams had, and that was one of the things that we struggled with. So him just keeping us together and keeping us at least somewhat competitive was pretty big.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
doubt.
Yep,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Red.
No, go ahead,
No.
please.
No, you please.
All right. I was just gonna say, yeah, Yellowjin was one of those guys where you kind of knew he was coming as a sub from the majors. You knew he had talent. You knew he had skill, but the intangibles that he had were probably the biggest reason why people put him as the MVP. It was the way he played the game, the manner how he played the game, and then how he dealt with both his both his teammates and his opponents throughout the whole process. I mean, I I think he's a stand-up player, and I think he demonstrated that throughout the rest of the season. I think he's a very fitting MVP.
I mean, we know that, um, for example, the man that we've already mentioned, Scarab, um, was probably like the best player in terms of stats throughout the season in the mini league. We know a lot of other players that are talented were there as well, trying to show off their stuff. A couple other subs from major leagues teams like Cushion Zero, Slim, of course, was a fantastic opponent in the jungle. All these teams are very talented. I think in the end, the actual vote should have been less on MVP and more on most sportsman-like character, because that's what Charles truly amplifies, I think. But that was the vote, and he gets that award. So congratulations to him.
And I mean,
And
don't mince words for sure. I mean, he is, in my opinion, at least, and in the community's opinion, the most valuable player to his team. He went wherever he had to go in order to at least make his team competitive, against some very solid opponents in that mini league. And I think there's no bones about it when you announce the final award here, that Yellowjin had a hand in that, and so I think he is the most valuable player to his team in the mini league.
there you go. I'll let Nick say it, since he is my teammate, and I would always vote for Charles. Um, but in the MIP, which was not a community vote, this was an evaluation standpoint, and so I will take a step back from this because this is also a second teammate of mine. I was not I recuse myself from the decision making process here, but um, I will let Nick sort of explain our pick. The minors' most improved player is Cat Girl Chipotle.
Cat
So
girl
Nick, take it away.
Chipotle.
Take it away.
She I as anybody who knows me knows, as I said, I don't mince words. I'm gonna say it exactly how it is. Cat Girl Chipotle showed up in the prospects of season 2, and everybody went, "Oh, is she new? What's going on?" Um, but she put her nose to the grindstone all year, all season, and now she's a serviceable mini league player. Um, I think a lot of people don't see it yet, because of the team as a whole that she was on, was a team of learning, more than a team of trying to win right now. And I think that she did the best job retaining the knowledge that was bestowed onto her, by her teammates, by her friends, in the major league, and she utilized it to the max. She's done a great job. She is now a serviceable mid laner moving forward, and who knows, maybe she'll even captain a team coming into season 3. I don't know, but I think that the most improved player, without a doubt, Cat Girl Chipotle. Congratulations.
Mm-hmm. From an objective standpoint, I'm a friend of hers. Um, I saw her entire process of learning Smite up until this point, and she went from at the beginning of this season from a brand new player, sub bronze, to someone who could very well easily make gold on PC.
Hmm.
Um, no doubt about it in my mind. Um, she plays very well with people that she knows, and so that's what made this our squad a squad that she excelled at. And she has a lot of very talented people who have been helping her mechanically, and it really showed in the games that she was subbing in. She subbed in for the mini league finals. She subbed in the play-in game
Hmm.
to establish who was the second best team in the mini league in terms of record.
Hmm.
And hats off to her. Her mindset is wild. She just like honestly, she goes into every game like it's just pixels on a screen. If we win, we win. If we lose, we lose. And it doesn't get to her mental at all. It's kind of crazy. But you know, she's actually played and proved a lot. So,
No doubt. All 4 of those awards are, I think, spot on. Great job, community. Great job, analytical team, to choose those 4 players as the winners of the accolades for season 2.
hmm I agree. So, here we go into the expertise for you, Red, the all-star matchup in the mini leagues, the best of the worst, one might say.
Ooh.
Ouch!
Oh.
Ouch!
Ouch!
Oh.
I know. It
Oh.
hurts me in the meow meow.
Oh. Gotta swing at people like that already. Yeah, so as we said, the whole mini league thing, it was really difficult because we were trying to figure out, at least I personally was trying to figure out, we had 6 hard weeks of a regular season, plus we had gone through, playoffs. We had a play-in game, we had a finals. I mean, we had people that had worked their tails off to try and demonstrate that they had learned something, that they were, excellent at what they did. And so, um, I had been doing power rankings all season long, or actually since week 3 of the mini league. And I had done playoff scenarios. I had a stat sheet. I was trying to do more of like a statistician analytical thing, just so I could wrap my head around what was going on in the mini league. And I kind of scratched my head and said, well, the majors had their all-stars. They had their all-star games. They had their whole thing. Why doesn't the mini league have that too? And so Slim and Slim actually came on to one of my broadcasts for my personal Twitch channel, and he and I both did a power ranking. And then I kind of posed the question, hey, who would our all-stars be? You select one, I'll select one, so on and so forth. We'll go back and forth. And we we came up with a list of 10 people that we thought would be excellent. These would be our 10 people. If we were going to select an all-star team, these would be our 10, and then a couple of subs just in case they couldn't make it. And I started talking with some of the guys and goes, hey, we need to have an all-star game. You selected all-stars. We really like the list. Let's have an all-star game. So we did. And it was probably one of the funniest nights that we had just playing Smite. I came up with some weird ideas. So we had game 1 was your normal all-star setup. So, Team Scarabaks, Team Krakens, just going at it. And I mean, it was we had a draft where I let the team captains, Scarabaks, and I whiff Krakens, or I hit Krakens, depending on what he's calling himself this week. But they got to choose their teams, and we just said, okay, have at it, have fun. Dre and Jeering Lamb, who were two of the members on Team Krakens, couldn't make it, so we actually had somebody who we didn't realize was eligible, because when we did this list, we said you had to play at least 3 weeks in the mini league. And I didn't realize that he was eligible at the time, and then I realized, oh yeah, Ark actually played 3 weeks before he was called up. So he was our third sub, because Jeering Lamb and Dre couldn't make it. So he actually played on Team Krakens for the first game. But it was even the first game was just hilarious, because you had people playing out of role. You had people, trying to do what they could, where they could. And it was a fun game to watch. The second game, I had a God randomizer and a roll randomizer, and we made it random God in random rolls. So I'm trying to remember. I think we put Slim in the mid lane. I think we had Zero. I think Sphinx was carry. I think Zero was jungle or something like that. It was just a fun night had by all. And then our third one was Assault, and we just played random Assault, and just went with that. And it was, again, we just had a fun time. And I forget who it was. I think it was Tubby Follower, who is listed as Smite Game Enter, had to leave. Again, he's one of our Welsh contingents. But it was like 3 or 4 a.m. for him, and he said, nope, I gotta go. I gotta, get ready for work. I want to, or take a nap or something like that. So I'm like, well, guys, we got to find a sub. And they go, well, why don't you come in? And I go, no, it ain't happening. But I did get to play one game with the guys. And it was a lot of fun, because that's all it was. And then I think our last game on Assault also, I had everybody join the same chat room on Discord, so everybody could hear what was going on with everybody else in Discord. But yeah, so if we want to talk about actually our mini league all stars, because I haven't even announced who it was. I just said the captains and a couple other people, but so the all stars selection, the all stars selected were Scarabaks, Jeering Lamb, I whiff Krakens, or I hit Krakens, Zero, Sphinx, Yellow Jin, Smite Game Enter, or Tubby Follower, Slim, Achilles JC, Mad Matt, Dre, and Zarayak. Zarayak is now known as Glacium Volpes. Um, I don't know. Do you guys feel that those were a fitting list of all stars?
Yeah.
Um, yes. I have I have only one protest vote, but I'm not gonna list it here.
Oh, believe me, that is why I invited Slim over as well. Um, because I was not going to make this list by myself because otherwise there probably would have been a couple of different people in there. Um,
Yes.
but I chose first and Slim chose second, so the you can tell odds and evens kind of who did what. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of these are correct. You know, like a wide majority of them.
mhm.
I think you batted for at least an A. 90%, right? But just a couple odd choices, I would
Fair
say.
enough.
Um, Nothing like terribly out of the ordinary. After all, it was only 4 teams,
Yeah.
um, and a lot of them are very close in skill. So it somewhat comes down to a judgment call. Um, but yeah, I think a lot of those were spot on.
Yeah. I don't know, Cooter. What I don't know if you were familiar with some of the festivities that were going on. It was just a fun night, but um, yeah, I think we had fun that night, and I hope it
Yeah,
was enjoyable to everyone else.
yeah, I was a spectator for a little while. It was a lot of fun, and I unfortunately I did have to go to bed at one point too, or take care of my kid, one of the two. I'm not sure which one it was, but um, it was fun. That's what the game is supposed to be. The game is supposed to be fun. We're not here for blood. We're here to have fun and play a video game together. And I think you harnessed all of that. So props to you. Props to you for putting it together, and making it very very an enjoyable event for everybody involved.
Well, I'm hoping that this kind of inspires what's going to happen next season as well. We are, I will say, just a little hint, but the mod team is talking about what we're going to do for All Stars for next season, and that is it's still up in the air as to when it's going to take place and what exactly is going to take place. But I think we're going to see a lot of fun between Major League All Stars, Minor League All Stars, how that's all going to work together. I'm really looking forward. The I am looking forward to season 3 with bated breath. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, yeah, I'd say so. Um, Season 3 does have a lot of new changes and excitements, which brings us into the next portion of the podcast and really the final portion. So, season 3 is a lot different than what has happened in the past. QSL has seen a significant amount of change over its course from season 1, season 2, and now finally to season 3. We are continuing the draft league, so that is not something that is changing, but there is going to be, everyone will note, a heavier oversight by the moderation team in terms of the draft, captains selected, and then finally trades and roster moves. Everything is going to be, as Red would say, under moderator discretion. So that's exactly the wording I'd use too. So don't worry. That we want to, as moderators, ensure a competitive as well as fun to play in league. And what is not fun is having basically your core top players being traded away to another team for scraps and having absolutely no repercussions for the situation. Um, which can summarize somewhat of the events that have happened over the course of season 2, as we already mentioned, players coming in that are of a high skill level that are not vetted properly and then are put into a position where they can effectively change the entire outcome of a season. So, a much heavier enforcement of the league's format is what I would say one of the bigger changes. But of course, the biggest change that people are going to notice is the organizations. And this has been announced for a while, of course. So, organizations are effectively a two team amalgamation where you have one team that is the majors team and a team that is an affiliated minors team, but they are all of one roster in an essence. So there are a lot of interesting things that you can do. For example, um, say your majors team, you have a player that is out or a player that is not doing so good, but you have a player that's on your minor league team who is developing very well and you want to give them a tryout. You can obviously do scrims, which is the smarter choice. But in a situation where you have to have a sub, you don't have to use that EMFA. Somebody who's entirely random outside of league play at the moment, you can use someone who is on your roster. Bring them up and have them play. Um, of course, it's not the most optimal situation if you are at the majors level, but that's a sort of interesting interaction that you can have. And then the affiliated minors team, you might end up having players switch between your rosters, but that does incur the penalty of having to pass through the waiver wire. So if you're coming from your majors team in your organization to your minors team, there is a period of 48 hours in which other teams, pending waiver wire, um, I guess it would be Q. They all go through. They all say whether or not they want to pick up that player, and if no other organization wants that player, then that player will pass down to the minors team, and then of course, fitting the roster rules, someone will either have to be brought up or dropped. So there is that aspect which encourages teams not to drop people, which is what we saw a lot of carousel of individuals, and says trade players, reach an amicable solution within the league that allows majors players to stay on majors league rosters without them losing their opportunity to play or being dropped into a situation that would allow a league to become completely uncompetitive because of a great player. It ends up being on that waiver wire. You can almost assuredly know that someone else is going to see that and pick that up for their own roster. So um, it keeps competitivity where it is. There will be additional restrictions to be announced on who is eligible to be dropped from a majors team, given the current situation with the influx of players. A lot of very talented players have joined the league, and so we want to limit that. Bless you. Um, those are a
Sorry, I was
lot
able to
of.
mute myself, but
I still got it. Don't worry, you're still blessed.
yeah, thank you. Sorry for those of
A
you
lot
who
of
are
that.
listening to the podcast. I have a sneeze button, but it only works on the stream. It doesn't work on Discord, and we were talking over Discord, so they got to hear it.
Oh.
They got to hear it in all of its glory, and you guys didn't hear it at all.
All right, but that's a lot of the most significant changes. The season itself is slated to be 7 weeks of season play and a 2-week playoff. Again, Red was talking about a potential all-star week to be brought into the season from the originally announced, but that's the very least of what you will see so far. So a 7-week season starting about at the beginning of July, all the way leading into September with the 2-week playoff. Um, and finally, bringing in, we have our owners of the organizations, which we've announced.
I was going to say
So,
before we switch over to that real quick.
oh, okay,
Um,
okay, yeah.
just so all of our listeners are aware, um, all of this stuff is still technically pending. A lot of the rules for season 3 have been written down, and we are trying to make this as black and white as possible. We do not want to do a he said, she said, this mod, that mod. We want to make sure that the decisions that are made in cooperation with other moderators, that they are made as a team so that we are all coming from the same place and with the same understanding. That way, when an issue does arise, we as a moderator team can say, this is what it says in the rule set, and we are going to attempt to maintain consistency throughout the season. And if you don't like it right now, that's something we can change for season 4. But as for right now, this is what the rule set says for season 3. The waiver wire is being clarified so that that will work a little bit smoother. Some of the other things that we're talking about, again, All Star break, All Star week, that still has to be solidified. But then we're also talking about making sure that the process by which players are selected is done and traded is done in a fair manner. We want to make sure that QSL is definitely fair, competitive, but that we feel that players are getting a sense of value, that they are valued on their team rather than just being someone who's been tacked on. And so by introducing the waiver wire, by introducing some of the other things that are done at mod discretion, or some things that you have to kind of, make sure that they pass muster before they are allowed to happen. We want to make sure that players aren't feeling like they're just kind of chess pieces to be moved, but rather that they are actual players that are valued and should be valued by their organizations as they are drafted and selected and moved around. That yes, there are business decisions that need to be made, but also that they are here, they're going to have fun, and they're going to learn to just to play a video game well. We'll put it that way. Um, but yeah, so that's all I wanted to clarify on. But yes, if you wanted to talk about our next topic here.
Yes, yes. So, that's good clarification, Red. All of this, when it comes to season 3 documentation, will eventually be made to the public. It is just currently being constructed, and so it would not be very constructive to have um, an incomplete document in front of everyone in public view, because there is still scrutiny that we want to have before it is released. So, thank you for your patience on that topic. And for the owners of season 3, they have been determined, they've been announced. Let me just go ahead and bring it up. So we have a lot of individuals here. So I'm just trying to actually pull it all up. So the first organization is headed by Neptune and Chevy, owners of 2 different Smite leagues, coming together to be the heads of the Goon Knights. Our good fellow mod as well, Poe, will be heading the organization known as the Underworld. King Cooter, you can announce yours.
Oh, I will be heading the King's Court.
Yes, the fitting name. The return of the king, one might say. Um, and then we have myself and, again, fellow moderator Bonsai Joe heading the organization known as the High Rollers. We
Nice.
have, yes, nice. Our HR head man, Ark, heading the Archon Dragons.
I love
Me
that
man
D&D
Link.
reference.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
Love that D&D reference.
and it fits the name too, Archon.
Mm-hmm.
We have Meaty Man Link heading the organization known as the Zeus Juice. We, oh yeah, and then we have Skeet coming in, heading the organization again, taking season 2. There is no rule against taking former names. Phenoms once again is what he will go with, and then finally we have Pog, Boomy House Pog, heading his Booney Gang once again 2 seasons in a row. So that is the mile high overview of what we're looking at when it comes to season 3. And since we do have an unbiased party here, we can ask what his thoughts are so far on organization. I mean, you can give your opinions on team organization names rather if you want to, but
Oh
just
boy.
an overview you think of the leadership here.
I think it's going to be interesting. I am one of those weird people that kind of said, you know what? I know mods aren't going to play in season 3, but I'm going to take that step even a little bit further and say, you know what? I'm not even going to be involved in an organization. I know that since I'm writing a lot of the rules, or at least codifying and solidifying some of this stuff, I don't want to have the perception that the rules that have been written are written to benefit one particular team. Um, and so, looking at the orgs as they are right now, yeah, there's quite a few of the teams are led by mods. But I am not going to let that sway any opinion that I have. The organizations as they are, I am looking forward to this. I am looking forward to what happens here. I think we have some great names. I really like the Underworld. I really like the High Rollers and the Archon Dragons. Um, some of them could probably use some work, and some of them I
Like the King's Court.
no, not necessarily that. I'm more looking at Zeus Juice going, are you
So
sure that's
good.
not against are you sure that's not against community standards? I just ugh. But I will say this. We have vetoed other names because they were against community standards. And if you think some of these are bad, oh my goodness, some of the ones that were rejected are just terrible. So I'm glad that these came out because these actually look like, the owners actually put some thought into what their organizations were going to be named. Um, and no matter what the draft happens, I think this is going to be a fun one. Although, no offense to Phenoms, but I'd like to see someone else win season 3.
It'll
I want to
happen.
see
Don't worry.
the rise happen. The phoenix, the proverbial phoenix, so to speak.
Yeah, I feel like there's going to be a lot more competitiveness. As we alluded to here in season 3, we're about half and half in terms of signups of new players to returning players, which leads to the very interesting situation we've gotten ourselves into, where there's a lot of players who feel like this is the league for them at the time, who have returned. There are some who have unfortunately left us, but nothing you can do. Season 2 was a little bit rough for a lot of parties. We hope to gain back that favor with a successful execution of season 3. But I do have to agree with you, Red. It's very exciting, and I do want to highlight some of the captains who have been selected and locked in, but have not yet been announced to the community. So this is a little bit of a, I guess, an exclusive to the QSL podcast.
Ooh, if you've made it this far.
If you've
Yeah,
made it this
we're an
far,
hour and a half in right now, so if you've made it this far, congratulations. Here's your reward. You get a sneak peek at some of the captains.
so the first one I want to highlight is actually not a majors but a minors. Um, Poe had selected for the underworld. Her minors team, Raptor, a returning player from 2 seasons of QSL play. Um, and Raptor again is switching up his role, I believe, to support. Um, he's shown himself to be at least consistently a gold level PC player. So it'll be very interesting to see what he does in this new leadership position. He's going into a different role. He's going into a leadership position, which he's never been a captain of a team. So, like being here for 2 seasons, it shows where his maturity is at, and where people put their trust. But it also does show him dropping down for the first time ever onto a minors league roster that he still has a lot of places to go, but this is a season that is all uh, it's his to lose. He has a lot of self confidence, and I think that he can do a lot where he has been put.
No doubt, no doubt. I mean, he's a great player. And just having the wherewithal to understand that, hey, moving to a new role is not easy. So maybe I am better suited at the minor league level to kind of hone and develop my skills. Is that's worthy of an applause for him. Good for him.
Absolutely. I know he's been at least this season. He was a carry, and he was an excellent carry. I think he played jungle for a little bit too. Maybe my memory is kind of off on that, but um, I know that he's been able to fulfill multiple roles, and I think he did. I mean, he afforded himself great in the major leagues. Again, moving to this new role of support, moving to an administrative role. Um, we'll see what he does. I hope things work out for him.
Indeed. There's no other man that I would like to succeed. Even though he's on a different team, obviously a different organization. He's a stand-up guy. There's nothing to say bad about him in terms of that. So, um, hats off to him for this new opportunity. And then another person I'd like to highlight is a member of a team that's in this podcast right now. I want to highlight Vacas actually, because this is a very interesting pickup. Vacas, I think, has been consistently underrated in a lot of people's minds, because he was even previously the bench on that Phenom squad for Mr. Kepri. I think he has played very well, and I think it's a very natural pick for our friend here, Nick, um, because obviously got to shout out the Berg boys being two Pittsburgh men, but
4-1-2.
Oh
yeah, the
boy.
4-1-2. But um, he's a one, as I've said, a solid player. Um, and I don't know how his leadership is going to be, but I know he is a nice enough guy, and I want to see how he deals with the new responsibility here, going away from his squad and phenoms, who we all know were pretty chummy, into what will end up being an entirely different roster.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you have to remember too that he was playing off role in the solo lane um, this season, so he is a QSL champion and a crucial piece of that team playing in an off role. Fantastic player, fantastic guy, and I think this whole um, the whole organizational structure that's new to the QSL. There's going to be a couple different ways to handle it, I believe. And I think that the King's Court is going to be handled slightly differently than others may be. Vacas is going to be an on the battlefield leader, but he's not going to have to lead in the same capacity that you have seen captains in the past, in past QSL seasons have to lead. A lot of the personality things and the roster things, him and I are going to handle together, and then hopefully moving forward, maybe he decides he wants to be an organizational leader moving forward. Um, we'll see. We'll see. It should be an exciting season for Bacchus and for the King's Court in general.
All right. There is one final player, unless you have anything else to add, Red, that I'd like to highlight before we wrap it up.
No, no, I by all means, I'd go right ahead.
The one final player that we've already talked about today, um, is going to be spearheading the Zeus Juice Chosen Miners team. Lynn will captain it. Catgirl Chipotle in game. Um, Cooter had already touched on it earlier. You know, I'm a teammate, a friend. Um, this is going to be something that I know that is new to her. Um, she was by no means a captain or in a leadership position on the mini league team. Um, she has not exactly led before, so it's going to be very interesting to see how she handles it. But um, credit to Cooter's word that she is in a position now where she is serviceable enough that somebody has selected her to captain a team, which you think in a lot of ways might end up being the best player, not necessarily, but one of the better players on the team and the person that the team ultimately has to rally behind. So I kind of just want your guys' thoughts as to how this might pan out in season 3.
I read.
Um, yeah, that is going to be a good question. I kind of have to take offense at your previous statement. There is no possible way that the captain is one of the better players on the team. I mean, I was a captain of a minor league team this past year. There is no way that is fair to anybody, especially on my team. I was probably one of the worst players on my team.
I not necessarily mechanics wise, I think goes into that. I don't think you were the worst player on that team in terms of what you actually brought to the table in terms of an organization, but that's just my personal opinion. I don't think it's all about what you leave on the battlefield. It has other things.
Well, thank you for that. But I I actually am in, I'm gonna I actually am excited to see what Lynn's gonna bring. Um, I mean, going from what I knew her capabilities were during the prospect matches, because I was brand new to the QSL in season 2. And I was actually brand new to competitive Smite in season 2. And being that um she was kind of joining that as well, and seeing her sort of take that role, and kind of say, this is what I need to work on, this is what I've worked on, this is sort of the um I could almost say this is sort of the reward for all of her hard work, and it's demonstrating that, what, you have progressed so well that you should be a captain for a minor league team. And I am so happy that she is stepping into this role. I think she's going to do a great job, and I would love to see her excel at this.
I agree with
Any,
you. I agree
yeah,
with you. I think I think that I think it will be slightly out of her comfort zone to do it, and I think that's the beautiful part of it.
yeah, it's definitely gonna be a new experience for her. Um, Brand new, as new as you were, Red, to competitive Smite.
Yeah.
Um, so it's going to be a very interesting season. There's a lot of other captains that we haven't mentioned. There's a lot of captains that have still yet to be picked. So do not worry if you're biting your fingernails waiting for someone to DM you. If you've at least signed up on the season 3 enrollment to potentially captain a team. So there is still more to happen, but we do anticipate that. I have no idea when this is going to be uploaded, but I anticipate probably by the end of June 7th that we will have most of our captains, if not all of them, picked. So do be aware of that to any of those who want to be a captain. But otherwise, uh, that is it. It has been a while. This has been an extremely long. We hope to keep the podcast going, of course, with our original host, Joe, and possibly Skeet joining in every now and again.
When he actually has
Because,
internet.
yeah, when he's actually, has an internet, has his headset, and isn't in the middle of nowhere in California. So, uh, a lot of hopes there. But the additional hope we have is that this season is going to be a page turner in the history of QSL where, um, we can effectively and efficiently have this league run, have it be competitive, have the most people have fun, and ultimately play the game that we've come here to play, which is Smite. So, with that said, any parting words, fellas?
Let's get to season 3. I'm so excited. Let's do it.
Yeah, I am absolutely stoked for season 3. I am really excited to see what's going to happen as we enter prospect matches. A lot of the new people coming in. I'm really excited because we've also partnered with Gassel, the Gods Arise Smite League, and we have received a lot of new players from them as well. And so I am so happy to see where this partnership is going to take us, but also what these new players are going to bring. Because with new players and with the league growing and expanding, it's going to bring more challenges. And I can't wait to see what the challenges are going to be, how we're going to be able to solve them, and better than that, how we're going to succeed and just grow this thing even better, and how the QSL is going to make it even better for season 4 and season 5.
Mm-hmm. Don't worry, there's still plenty to be excited about, even with season 3. There's a whole lot of branding. Fantastic graphical designers are going to be coming in to make some of these logos. We might have even uh, some promotional materials coming up into the draft. Do remember that our current schedule dictates that by the 11th, at the latest, captains will be selected, and by the 13th, at the latest, prospects will begin. This is pending, of course, the selection of captains. And at the latest, the draft will happen July 2nd, Friday night prime time. So that is where we sit. And that is where we end this podcast. To those who have made it this far, thank you for listening. It does mean the world to us, the world to us.
Thank you.
So,
Yep,
um,
thank you.
nothing else that we can say. You have our utmost gratitude, and get hyped. We're going in. So this has been the QSL podcast, June 5th. I was your temporary host today, Rectal, joined here by Red Sniper and the King Cooter. Thank you all, and have a good day.